when we try not to be judgmental, but in the end we are. Aloha and welcome everybody to today's episode of Iamaloha. Come home to your true self. Today I want to speak especially to those out there who are mixed like I am and were raised in a world where we had to adjust. I mean, come on, we're the ones that were traveling to places or were moving to places, so we were the guests and we were supposed to adjust to the people of the place that we were living in. So we learned to become free of that at some point, to not judge everybody, because we're just going to accept them the way they are, because, we're guests here. And somehow that made us guests all over the place. So one of the things that I was struggling with up to a certain point was, on one hand, being sad when people were overly judgmental, especially when it came to their culture, especially when it came to their traditions, because it made me feel like I wasn't part of that on one hand. And on the other hand, it made me feel like, hey people, why aren't you more open to other cultures, to other beings and other opinions and other traditions, But then I realized that in the end, I was doing it myself too. I was being there. I was judging other people for how they were. Maybe not by their culture, maybe not by their tradition, but I was judging them for their character or for the way they were acting. And what it showed me was that on one hand, it was bugging me that other people would be judgmental, but on the other hand, I was being judgmental myself. And and that's not nice. It doesn't feel right, and it doesn't make you feel right either, because on one hand, I'm sorry, I'm being eaten by mosquitoes around here. So on one hand, you want to be, and I think this is the picture of an inner fight we're having inside of us, because on one hand, we're taught to to be flexible and to be nice to everybody and to embrace everybody's differentness, and at the same point, and at the same time, we are being judgmental. And the thing is that most of the time, and that's one of that was the hardest one, realizing that the place where I was worst judgmental, let me put this in right English, was with myself. I was being judgmental with myself, with anything that had to do with my own culture, anything that had to do with my own character. And instead of embracing and accepting that I had all these different things, I was judging myself for being torn. I was judging myself for not finding a home, for not finding a belonging. And so I kept judging, and it hurt me when other people judged. But in the end, I was the most judgmental person in the room, because I was being so judgmental about myself. And I was also to others, but mainly to myself. And I wanted to bring this up because I believe that I'm not the only one of us mixed race kids that have that. I believe that was one of the reasons what I was just talking about was one of the reasons why I tried denying certain cultures within myself. Which means I was denying parts of myself, how there's the stereotypes of the typical German or the stereotype of the typical Latino. And so on one hand, the stereotype of the German is, stuck up and, very planning and, and I was seeing that as something bad. So I was trying not to appear that way, but realized, hey man, you know what? I really need structure. So I have a German side that wants to have the typical structure. And then on the other hand, you have the Latinos. They're always late and, they're all over the place. And I was being judgmental about myself being like that. And that's how we start judging everybody and everything. And I feel that on one hand, that this judging also makes a distance. And the thing is, I'm not trying to tell you go and accept everyone and everything the way they are. because that's just how we were raised, right? We were raised to accept everything, and in the end we don't accept anything within ourselves. And what I'm trying to say with this is just accept, or on one point acknowledge that maybe you're being judgmental with yourself. Acknowledge that, but also accept it. That just like everybody else, you're allowed to find your spots and your things, and you're allowed to say, I like this or I don't like this. It's not a bad thing in certain moments to have a judgment about something, because you need to define certain things for yourself. It's important for us as brains, for our beings, that we want to define certain things. So if you want to define something, and basically judging something is that, then define that for yourself, but also accept that you have that side inside of you. And that if you want to change that, if you want to transform that, give yourself time. Because we're not going to be able to lose all judgmental things. This world is made of judgmental things. Everything around us, we need to judge. We need to judge if the stick in front of me is a real stick or if it's a snake and I have to run. You know, that's how it started back in the ages. And nowadays we judge everything because basically being part of a community means surviving for us somehow too. And I think the important thing is when we tend to see that other people are judging and are being judgmental, it's not nice. It doesn't feel nice. But every one of us does it at some point. And to be able to transform that and to let it go, I feel that we need to go into this acceptance. And I'm not saying just accept everybody the way, not the way we were brought up, to be flexible and to accept everything. No, I'm saying inside of yourself, accept that everybody has those sides. Because those sides are what make us who we are. And by having those sides, we actually see what might need transformation, what might need a different set, a different movement, a different angle. But for now, being in this judging world, to just accept that us as human beings, we needed to start that way. And we will have to let it go at some point. But before we can let it go, I think it's hugely, immensely important for us to just accept it as a side that we have. Every one of us has that. And I think it's part of that makes us humans, and that makes us, that makes us who we are. So try to be peaceful with yourself, go into acceptance of your judgmental side. It might not be nice always, and I ask you, if you have to be judgmental, not to be to the outside world, maybe to look for yourself first if you really want to set this judgment into the world, because I find it more interesting when we watch it within ourselves before we hurt someone on the outside. But that's it for me for now, for today, because that's one of the things that came up here in this beautiful state of Hawaii on the Big Island. We've been talking a lot of aloha, and actually today one of the biggest laws of the universe, or protocols of this universe, was the one of acceptance. To accept us the way we are. Because everything is aloha, so there's nothing we need to forgive. Everybody's right the way they are in the moment. With these words, I'm wishing you a great weekend. Thanks again for tuning in. And if you liked the podcast, please subscribe. If you think someone else might be needing these words, share it with them and spread the aloha. Thank you very much, and have a good time. And have a nice weekend. Talk to you soon. Bye. Mahalo.